Hey, Rod, we're back with the free agency edition of We Want Winners. We waited until some of the smoke cleared. The 49ers made some moves so that we could talk about it. And I guess I have to start with Mike Evans. Mike Evans said that he is the missing piece to this team. And I thought about it for a second. I said, you know what? I am happy that Mike Evans looks at his situation this way. I don't know if he's the only missing piece. There might be a couple of other missing pieces that they need to fill, whether it's through this draft or in free agency. But I like the signing, and I will say, because I want to get your take on this, I want to get this out of the way. I looked at this through the lens of fantasy football initially, and I was like, oh, man, this guy's always injured. And then I looked at his numbers. He might be always questionable for Sunday, but this dude plays. Outside of last year was the only year that he missed more than a couple games. And consistency is why he's so valuable. So we're hoping that last year was kind of outside of the norm. But he is 33, and that is a thing. But give me your take on Mike Evans coming in to be the number one wide receiver for the 49ers.
I have routinely been the cloud and raining on people's parade because I looked at it statistically as well, and what I saw wasn't a statistical blip. I saw what has been a I saw the cliff in what has been a 3-year decline. His
Yes.
yards have declined each of the 3 years. His games missed have increased each of the 3 years, with last year being a cliff. I mean, he missed what, 8 games. And his season didn't get off to a great start. Before the collarbone, he missed 3 games due to the chronic hamstrings that have been a plague in his career since 2019. So the hamstrings are that's a fixed thing. That's something you're going to have to deal with him every year. And the injury report shows that for the past 7, 8 years. Um, and my question, as always, is, and I tried to find it, and it's kind of hard to research, but I was not in the past 10 years able to find somebody who was over 30 who's had that kind of decline in yardage and increase in missed games have this huge comeback season. So I obviously as a 49er fan, I'm rooting for it. I would love that to happen. But I am firmly a benign skeptic on this move. I would love for it to work out, but I can what I see is all the ways that it could go wrong.
Okay, what was Mike Evans's rookie year?
2015.
Okay. So,
Oh no, wait a minute. Yeah, 2015.
okay, so similarly, I was kind of wondering about, some of that decline. I'm going to give you the starting quarterbacks for Mike Evans, which is why I may be more optimistic than you about this. 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019. It was a mix of famous Jameis and Ryan Fitzpatrick. 2020 to 2022, it's Brady. And 23 to 25, it's Baker Mayfield. Now, I'm not saying that Brock Purdy is twice the quarterback of Baker Mayfield. But what I do think is that Brock Purdy and his ability to put the football where it needs to be is going to be beneficial to Mike Evans. I think some of the injury concerns is the same as you. You look at their entire roster and it just seems like they continually get older and older every single year. It's like they cannot and some of this may be cap related, right? Because if you target a younger player who just hits free agency or target a younger player in a trade in the NFL, the younger the player, the demand for whatever it is going to be is like tenfold compared to what some of these older players make. And so I get that piece. But what I am going to bet on here is that moving into a Shanahan offense, having an accurate quarterback there with you, I think that's going to be beneficial for him. Now, is he going to be able to turn back the clock for all 3 of these years that he has signed? Highly unlikely. I think what we're going to see is a mix of, yeah, he may have to miss a handful of games over the next 2 seasons, but as we know, the Niners are betting big on these next 2 years. So I like the idea of bringing in somebody who's going to fight for the football and who's going to score touchdowns. Now, injuries are always going to be a concern, but I think the bet is if you're the 49ers, well, here's what's interesting. Here, the most interesting thing to me, Mike Evans said, I did my research, y'all. This was the team that was going to best fit what I bring to the table. He turned down, well, not that he turned down, but he chose the Niners over the Bills. And if I looked at Buffalo last year, I was like, man, Josh Allen was able to take them almost all the way, except he didn't have anybody to throw to. And he, like Mike Evans, like, I thought, oh, maybe he sees, this opportunity to just be Josh Allen's buddy for the next 2 years, and they could go do something in the AFC. Because if you look at it from the perspective of where are all the heavy hitters, the heavy hitters to me are still all in the NFC, and you have some very good teams in the AFC, but it's kind of less clear cut about who the best teams are. Maybe there's like, it just seems like Buffalo's like, man, just put it together for 1 year, and you guys should be able to skate into that Super Bowl. So Mike Evans himself sees the benefit of coming to San Francisco for his skill set, for his the last few years of his career as a big time NFL player. But the one thing that surprised me, he didn't look at all of the injuries that this team has sustained over the years and go, there's something there that might not be great for me. Why do all of those guys? Why are all of those guys getting injured? So that he said his research. That is something that an older player should be worried about. Mike Evans, it didn't seem to be a big worry to him.
A couple of things I will push back on is that in that offense that he's leaving from, I don't he's not gonna ever see the kind of volume he saw there that he's not gonna see that here. I just I don't I would be shocked if Mike Evans this year or next sees anywhere near I guess with one caveat. If George which is that caveat affects more than just Mike Evans. If George misses half of the season, which apparently is not what the 49ers or he is expecting,
You think George
I
is
would
on the
think
phone with Jason Tatum going like, "Hey man, what did you do to get back on the court so fast? I need to get back on the field."
I think that's the only way Mike Evans even sniffs 100 targets. And then what we're talking about when you make the combination of missed games, which you just have to bake into the equation, and the reduced targets, there's no argument for me that he is going to be an asset in the red zone. I guess what I question is for a guy who um, winning contested catches has been his calling card. Again, that's another place where the cliff or the decline in cliff is evident is both in his PFF drop grade and his contested catch percentage, which was the lowest of his career last year. So again, we're going to need a big comeback. And again, I'm rooting for that, but again, I am skeptical. And then I'm always skeptical when a player says he picked um situation X over situation Y because that can be true. But I also know that Buffalo traded for DJ Moore before, so the decision he was making was not to be going in to Buffalo as wide receiver one, which barring some sort of miracle, or I guess we can. I don't know. We're talking free agency. I don't see anybody who they're going to sign in free agency who would bump him off that spot. And honestly, I don't see anybody in the draft that's going to come in and be a week one starter. I am much more down on the wide receiver prospects in this draft, and clearly 49er Nation is. I believe that the notion that you would take Cooper or Concepcion at 27 is just nuts to me. I don't see both of them could end up being solid NFL players, but I don't see them being week one difference makers when there are other positions that have clear needs that do have, I believe, week one 10-year starters available to them at both the second and the first round. So again, the way I see overall 10,000-foot view, I see the Mike Evans move as a kick the can down the road situation in terms of rebuilding this wide receiver room, because you weren't going to do it in free agency because your options were basically Dobbs. If you were talking about a cornerstone piece, because Pierce never made it to market, neither did your guy in Dallas. So Dobbs was it. And I don't know that I would have been, jazzed about building a room around him anyway. And then the draft is the same thing. There's just not, outside of Tate, which again is not in our conversation at 26. There's just not anybody 27. There's just not anybody there. But 27 is a whole different animal in terms of a receiver draft. So I just believe I've been saying this since the season was over, that from when I looked at the market, I see this being a money ball situation for the 49ers in the wide receiver room. You try to cobble together enough
Mhm.
skill sets to run the offense Kyle wants to run, and then we look at it again a year from now in terms of getting some young blood in here and really reshaping this room for the future. But at the money, and again, what we haven't mentioned is only really like $16 million in
Yeah.
guaranteed money. So when you look at Mike Evans's body of work, even if he only plays 12 or 13 games, he's done enough to say for 1 year, really, I think that he can be a productive player and somebody that Kyle can scheme around to and we just hope that those 13 games, that a lot of them are at the end of the season, um, where and we hope that this whole team holistically is good enough that the end of the season matters,
Yeah.
because you can look at our statistics from last year and there were a lot of good things and it was a great season, but you know I believe that regression is a real thing and it's something that we need to be concerned about in terms of, we would hope for regression in a positive way on injuries, but then there were other production things that we kind of outkicked our coverage. Statistically, we were a lot more productive than the numbers would have indicated, and those things kind of regress to the mean season over season. So um overall, I don't hate it because they didn't pay him a whole bunch of money, um and you just hope that he's able to find the fountain of youth for one more last run to be able to stick it in the face of Tampa Bay. And because if he has one good season left, he has a Ronnie Lott Raider type season for us this year. Right, I'm referencing Ronnie Lott's first, kind of season as a Raider. It was great. It was the rest of it that where the decline happens. So I'm hoping for that for Mike Evans, that he has one last ride in him, and the Niners are able to benefit from that.
Here's a question, and I haven't seen it posed this way. I may just be looking in the wrong places, but guaranteed money for guaranteed money, Mike Evans versus Juwan Jennings. What is your stance on the decision that they made there?
Well, if I has JJ signed yet?
I haven't seen anything. I know,
Right. Yeah.
what people thought he might be asking, and which was always
Mhm.
going to be too rich for the 49ers blood, but,
Mhm.
he's probably looking for he may not get that, but he's probably looking for closer to what Mike got than what he's had to sign for over the last couple years.
Well, I would feel awful if the number comes down to like 16 million for JJ, and that if that's what you're giving Mike Evans. I would much rather have JJ at that number than Mike Evans at that number, because in looking at the numbers, you can get caught up in the box score with JJ, but his impact on the offense as a whole is so much is truly elite. While his box score numbers aren't anything to write home about, I believe he came in at like 35 among wide receiver um wide receiver. So he's not even as a wide receiver one. If you're 35, there are 32 other technically wide receiver runs. So he's not even that. But then when you factor in his impact on the run game, and then things you can't impact that you can't measure, that 49er fans know are true, the toughness, the energy, those things that you really can't quantify but are real in terms of Juwan Jennings. I would if the number comes in at that, kind of like the debacle there in in Baltimore,
Oh, we'll
where
we'll talk
you
about
know
that. We'll save that for the end, but I
okay,
definitely
well,
wanna talk to you about that.
if the number comes in less than what, he wants 20, 22, but if the number comes in closer to 16 or 17, I would have much rather had JJ at that number than, and the fact that even if that number is longer term, he's only 28 years old. So if you go 3 years, I would have been more than comfortable going 3 years at that number with JJ, rather than a 1 year deal with Evans. And spending Jed's money here, if that's a number for JJ, I don't understand why you couldn't structure a deal to make that happen with him with Mike Evans. I
I
just
think I
love
think
JJ as a player.
that's an interesting one. The reason why I pitted those 2 against each other in this thought exercise is because one of the things that came out of the season was that when it came to balls, I don't know the exact stat, but there were balls that JJ could have caught that actually turned into tipped interceptions. With I think the idea was that the ball hit his hands first and then popped in the air. Now, some of that is always going to be
Mm,
on the QB. That is not always on the wide receiver. But there was that
mhm.
conversation that I heard kind of as people were bringing up JJ coming back to the 49ers. And I think some of that is a lot of what we've been talking about over these last couple years is you kind of know that he's not stretching the field, so you kinda cheat on some of those routes that you know he's going to run. They don't have anybody to stretch, so I think that happens to a lot of their wide receivers is they just kinda get cheated, and people kind of expect the shorter stuff. So JJ's probably taking hits with non-small cornerbacks at all times because the defense kind of knows when the ball's coming to him, it's not going to be downfield that far. So, but that thing was talked about, and then the conversation was like, okay, is he from an athletic point of view, is some of that slipping for him? Which who knows? But I'm with you. I think we as 49er fans may overvalue JJ for the things that you just talked about, the aggression, the passion, and probably being the one player on the offense who pisses the other team off the most. People want to fight that dude. And so I like him for that number 3 slot as well. I just don't really like him as a number 1.
Oh no, I mean he clearly isn't a number one receiver, and we've seen it. We've seen optimal JJ is a wide receiver 3 in a good offense, and the further up that depth chart he climbs, the more most likely it's gonna the quality of the team is going to suffer. If he's your wide receiver 1, you don't have one of the best wide receiver rooms in the league, and so on. He's a wide receiver 2 on a middling team. His role is to be that wide receiver 3 on an elite offense. Probably not wouldn't be his role this year if he came back, but I'm not one who sees that. And again, you can argue that for what I am suggesting, 3 years at an AAV of $16 million, that's an overpay for a wide receiver 3. And I really don't have an argument. The numbers back you up on that. Yes, that is true. But I just think, especially in this in between time when we're trying to rebuild this room, I would definitely like him to be there for that. But maybe that's just not possible. And Mike Evans is what it is. Um, it's just that I know that I don't think I'm speaking out of turn to say it, or that it's a hot take to say that there's still work to be done in this room before week 1, and there's time to do it, and there are a lot of ways to do it. Some people believe it's in the draft. I'm not hopeful that, but then you've also got the second free agency, which is what I call after June 1. You're going to have a bunch of guys who are going to flood the market that will be available again in a Moneyball type situation. Um, so yeah, I'm sure they're not done, but we're hoping that Mike Evans can be a tempo.
All right, we'll hit on some of the other smaller moves that they made in a second, but were you surprised to see the 49ers immediately jump back on the Dre Greenlaw train when he got released?
That there has been that's why you were saying a half hour, and I was like, oh shit, how I'm gonna pack all the things I
Uh,
gotta say into a half hour.
yeah, well, a lot of things
But
happened since we originally talked about jumping on. There was a lot more news, so we can talk for as long as we
mhm.
want.
Yeah, the Greenlaw thing is interesting to me, not only at its face because of what Greenlaw means to us and Fred and whatnot, but the thing that I immediately went to is what is the message that they're sending about D Winters in particular, because this is his contract year. And that was where my mind went immediately. Is like, first, when I watched Dre, because my sister-in-law is a Denver fan, so I watched every Denver game this year, and had a rooting interest in both Huff and Dre. And while Dre only played like 8 games, he looked really good when he was out there. So extrapolating that to us, obviously we would hope that he's able to play more than 8 games, and if he just matches his production with a year ago, with more reps, he is going to be an asset, and is clearly linebacker 2 here, which is going to be interesting for Winters, who I have honestly, he has not progressed the way the 49ers would have hoped, but I saw flashes last year of somebody who, in a heavy role, showed signs of life and signs of production. But if we go to all of those young players, I saw Lombardi write something about it being time for them to put up or shut up. He probably has not progressed as rapidly as they would have liked. And they probably would have hoped last year he would have taken a larger step forward with Fred being out. And statistically, he just didn't. And now there were reasons. He was hurt for a lot of the season. And for one, his those initial injuries, he started off on fire, especially in pass coverage. And you could definitely see numerically there was a dip. It was pre-injury and post-injury for him in that aspect of his game, particularly. And then overall, and then he kind of, as he potentially got healthier, is the narrative that I'm going with. He got better, but Dre Greenlaw, if he's healthy, and even we saw last year not healthy, is going to level up your level of production, especially in the run game, which we'll talk more about when we talk about our defensive interior acquisition. But
I'm just calling that man
we have
double O until I figure it out.
Osa is what I've just got. I'm very comfortable with his first name.
Yeah.
So we'll just do that. Or double O is even better. But even when our defensive interior play in the run game has been poor, Fred and Dre specifically together have been erasers for that problem. They've always kept the run game at a very, very high level. And I have no reason from what anything I've seen from Fred, I have no doubt, that if those conversations about him playing last year were even there was a monicum of truth to it, I have no doubt that he'll be ready and back to himself with 6 months off. So I have no expectation to see any kind of dip from him. And I think that Dre will be Dre. So whatever we get up front, those guys have proven to be erasers in that case, which is going to be interesting to see how I would imagine that means Winters is going to be linebacker 3, which we've seen in the past. The example that I came to is Aziz Al Shire, as how you can be effective in that third linebacker position, and maybe in a free agent year that comp is truly on point, or it is on point in that he's able to show enough in that role that he's able to go somewhere else and command at very least a prove it deal as a starter somewhere. Because I think there's no question in my mind that he has all the talent in the world to be a starting linebacker in this league.
And we have to mention, which was a bit of a surprise, I think, to everybody, Bryce Huff decided to step away. Now, when someone is 27 years old, you kind of wonder, okay, is it, are the injuries just piling up and he needs a break? Or is this really, we saw it with Patrick Willis, who was a young man as well, who stepped away at an early age and never came back. But I kind of wonder, I was like, man, maybe this dude was just beat up to all to hell because he's at an age where, you're not paying him to be a number one. He could be a very beneficial secondary defensive end and still play at a pretty decent level. So, but he decided that it was time for him to walk away, at least for now, and go do something else with his career, which he mentioned starting up something.
Mhm.
What did you think of Huff?
Yeah, that was a shock. Didn't. I had. I. It was pretty clear that that $17 million number wasn't gonna be close to what they would pay him this year. But I figured there was a place for him either here or in Tennessee kind of made sense to me as well. So him just walking away completely was sort of a shock. Um, but yeah, it sounds like he's got something else brewing, but and it's and good for him, just like Patrick Willis. He had something else that he was passionate about and was able to move into. But my thought, as strictly, um, I guess, as a mercenary type of thought, is that there's very few things in this world that he's ever going to be able to do where he could make $10 million in 1 year doing it. I mean, God bless him if his venture goes to the moon and he gets acquired, then maybe I'll look like an ass in saying that. But I would imagine that if he had a contract that was scheduled to pay him 17, and obviously that probably wasn't going to happen. I don't think that there's any way in the world with the demand at the position he plays, he couldn't have commanded half of that, 9 million. Which is just, you know, I don't know what his body situation is. I don't know what his health overall situation is. He's made $40 million, so maybe he figures that that's enough. But $10 million is $9 million, $8 million. That's a lot of money to walk away from, and kudos to him for being mature enough that he clearly made that decision based on more than just the money of it.
Yeah. So the Niners will. I don't know what their plans were with him long term, but obviously as a piece of the pass rush puzzle, he unfortunately for him, once Bosa went down, he had to be the number one, and that wasn't going to be great
Which
for
was
him, as we saw by the
which
number
was
of sacks that the team had, which was like 20 or
mhm.
something. So, all right, the next thing on my list is what the hell are we doing with Big Trent?
You talked about JJ and the smear campaign that happens in faithful land, or as I call them, faithful land. Anytime it comes time to pay somebody, then all of a sudden there's this this anti-campaign that happens. Well, he's not this, and he's not that, and and they are striving to do that with Trent. And if you want to make comparisons, Trent versus Trent, we can we can have that argument that at 38 he's not as good as he was at 36. Okay, we can do that. But any argument to make Trent Williams anything less than a top 4 tackle in the league last year is just ridiculous. So you can play that game about how his numbers are worse than they were 2 years ago, but if you just compare him to his peers, he's still an elite tackle. So absolutely, I don't see any choice, realistic choice, other than to pay him or let him go. Because trust me, that $39 million that Trent Williams is scheduled to make, somebody's willing to pay him that,
Mm-hmm.
because he is still a difference maker. Now, I can understand the 49ers hesitance, I guess, to maybe it's just not as simple as paying him this year. The calculus they're doing is tying up more guaranteed money for year 38 and 40, which is that's a legitimate concern. How much are you willing to commit to him at 40 years old? I, that that's fair, but I just think that the way you are constructed right now is you are screwed. If he's not your tackle week 1, I don't see you're not. If you say he's top 4, I don't see you bringing any of those other 3 in to replace him. So you are way worse off this season, and I'll make the case moving forward. I've watched this team for damn near 40 years, and I've never seen a tackle as good as him. So when he leaves, I have no reason to believe in my next 40 that I'm going to see one as good as him. No disrespect to Bob Sinclair, because I ain't see him play, but he's the best tackle I've seen as a 49er. So what you're saying is we're just going to let the best tackle ever leave, and we're going to replace him with What? It's probably not going to be another one. I would just say it's probably just not. You just don't. Those dudes don't just. You don't get in a position. This team is really Kyle in their first year was probably the only time they drafted in a position that that you're even in a conversation for a talent, somebody who is that talented. You just don't get Trent Williams is at 27 in the draft. That's just not how it works. So I don't see them having a choice. But I maybe you have a different perspective. I think they have to figure out a way to sign him.
It's less about, to me, it's not even really about what they think about his skill set. Because again, like you said, let's compare him to who the replacement would be, and the difference is wide, very wide. You just invested all of your money in QB1, and that is the most important position on the offensive line to for your quarterback. So the problem that I have is that they constantly do this dance with the players, which gives them a pretty bad reputation around the league with other players. We've seen this happen where they mess around with Nick, and Nick is just like, I'm just gonna go work out and eat chicken breast. So you guys do what you gotta do. Like I'm not blinking. My agent's not blinking. You guys are playing games. I'm just good. I don't even mind waiting until the season starts. You guys cannot play without me. And this is what they constantly do. And now they're doing it. I mean, they've done it with Trent before. And it's like, okay, we're gonna go all the way to the end, then we're gonna sign this deal, and then we're gonna go through the same dance next year. But so much of the Parag and Jed negotiation tactic is to kind of sully the name of the player. And I just like maybe football is like the person who has all of the chips is just the team because the NFL is so powerful, and these teams and these television rights are always just going up and up and up, and maybe the players are really just they're just dominoes, they're just chess pieces. But to the fans, no matter how the NFL runs itself, to the fans, we identify with these guys. And the 49ers and their management always seem to be the villains in these scenarios. Trent Williams doesn't make my life any better outside of on Sundays and Mondays. He is a surefire first ballot. Well, maybe not. And the way the NFL Hall of Fame works is different, but he's a surefire Hall of Famer. So if you're telling me that, hey, we are the 49ers, we never tank, we're always trying to win the Super Bowl, we put the pieces on the field, and then at the same time, you're going to play games with maybe the best player on your team. If he's not the best, he's in the top 3. It's just a it's just different from what you're trying to tell me otherwise, and that makes me as a fan think, okay, the guys working the cap and making these deals are jokesters. Like, well, why do we have to play this game every single year? And then knowing that you get to the end, and you're going to sign the guy, and then if you don't sign the guy, then that just means that the guy called your bluff. That's what it means to me. So that is more so my issue with this dance that they do constantly. There are going to be times where they do this with players who are lesser than Trent Williams, like they did with Debo. They had an idea that Debo was going to be at the value that they saw him at for maybe 1 year or 2 years. And he was like, for 1 year he was great, and then the second year fell off, and he's continued to go down. So maybe that was a good bet for them. Maybe that was the right bet. But this dude is playing the most important position on your offensive line at a very high level, plays hurt all the time. And so if you've backed yourself into this corner as the 49ers and you don't take care of him, then I think you've bluffed, and he's just playing a better game of poker.
You said a lot there. And I'm gonna there's a lot that I feel about it. But the overarching thing was that I think honestly we see it a lot differently because the way from what I see, and I understand that the internet is trying to grasp what's real and what's not on the internet is who's a bot and who's real is challenging. But what I see over and over in this fan base, the internet fan base, and I make a distinction because the fans that I meet out in the wild are completely different than the ones that I meet online. But to a man online, I see them at every turn backing Jed and Parag in these things, which number one just doesn't make any sense structurally because I've never turned on the TV ever to watch Jed and Parag do anything. These guys are the ones who I connect with and who I root for. Kind of like you just said, it doesn't really affect my life outside of Sundays, but on Sunday, I tune in to see Trent Williams and Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey. So when you tell me it's time to pay these guys, I think they should get, especially understanding the structure of the league, that Trent Williams is a unicorn in the fact that, this is year whatever for him. Most careers aren't that long. And the fact that he has made $200 million, the fact that some fans think that that's why he should give teams discounts, which is just wholly a ridiculous concept
Okay. All,
in
all
my
while
whole mind.
all while the salary cap is just going up like crazy every year, right? Like
Which they don't.
if you're Trent and you go, "Hey, the salary cap just went up." I don't even know what it went up, 25 million, 30 million, whatever it was.
Mhm.
And he's like, "Okay, then you can sort of fit what I'm trying to do here. You've just got a bump."
Right, right, exactly. And again, the big bump is the fact that this team is worth like 12x what it was when Jed took over, and the players don't profit at all. Okay, I guess you could make theoretically the cap goes up, so their salaries go up. So that is, they benefit, but they don't benefit from the valuation like the way the owners do. The cash out really happens when you take that what did Jed just do with the equity share? He's able to cash in 10%
So yeah,
of
sell
that
a small
increase
piece, which kind of
to
resets
get
the how much the team is worth because then you have to do you have to do the
the
value.
valuation
Yeah.
and So he was able to cash out $800 million in two transactions, which is what it is. The players don't ever get any of that money. The increase that the league has, um, as the league grows, there is no mechanism that allows for the alumni and the players to. They're not equity partners in the growth of the league. So the salary is where they get it. So that's why I'm an advocate of getting everything you can get when you can get it because your window is small. You are contributing to the growth of this game when your players like Trent and Fred and the great players in the league and also the middle class players also contribute to the growth of the league. So they should get as much as they can. I don't see them as the disposable pieces. I see them as valuable pieces to the whole ecosystem of the league, and I think they should be paid. So you hear fans talk about all the time. Is there was a time when you played for free, which is horse pucky. You go back. My uncle handed when I started watching football. He handed me North Dallas 40. And I read the book and I saw the movie, and the quote is as prescient today as it was then. When I call it a game, you call it a business. When you call it when I call it a business, you call it a game. That is the push and pull game that is played with players all the time. You're asking for $39 million, and there was a time when you played for the love of the game, and you should be willing to play for less than that. Why? Why would he do that? It doesn't make any sense at all to me. The notion, just the proxy battle that's happening with fans, how they are able to make it in their mind that they are on the side of the 1% in these management labor situations. How on earth could you be taking Jed's side? That dude wouldn't even shake your hand if he met you. What are you doing? It doesn't make any sense to me that fans aren't in lockstep with the players getting as much as they can.
Yep. Yep.
Unless it's a proxy thing that's happening that they have to accept whatever the fuck the boss gives them, so they think that these guys should be the same, which I think should be the example should be completely different. That you should strive to get as much as you can, and then we could go into this whole discussion about unions in America and where that the labor movement is here for the common man. That's way deeper than this podcast, but you should be on the side of labor. I am an entrepreneur and I have employees. I still see myself as pro pro labor at every turn, and I can't understand where when labor as people aren't pro labor or pro management. It just boggles my mind. But I digress. I'm sorry. This is football. What am I? I just this this is not a labor
Well,
discussion. I
I
went
I
full
mean,
Bomani Jones on you.
they're gonna do it, and the reason they're gonna do it is because they have not created the plan B for when Trent really retires. So
That's the frustrating part about what you the all everything you said is that they play this game, and I can't remember one time when they didn't end up caving. So then what are we doing? What do we do this dance for, where it's always this low ball offer? That's where we start. And then when it's all said and done, the player and his team basically get what they were asking for. So why do we have to go through this song and dance, especially in a circumstance like this where you said that where, like you just said, they don't have a plan B. Okay, we're gonna move off of Trent Williams. Great. And then do what? Anthony Pleasant? That's what the plan is? I don't see it. I don't see how you invest in Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle, and you make all the moves that you're making, and just to say that what we've decided is that Anthony Pleasant is going to be our left tackle in 2026. It just doesn't hold water to me.
all right, let's talk about double O here. So the 49ers traded a third round pick for Dallas Cowboys defensive lineman Osa. I'm not even going to try the last name. I want to hear this
Mm-mm.
thing like 100 times um,
Mhm.
before I even try. Because, we still have
I'd
not.
love to hear. I want to hear him say
Well, yeah. And how long has Sam O been on our team? And I still haven't gotten that one down yet.
it.
So
Mm-mm.
uh, Dallas paid him I think 4 for $80. And then now he became a depth piece because of other moves they made, which made him expendable. And the 49ers swooped in. What is your thought process here? Because I'm reading things about him, and it seems like the consensus glass half full outlook is, well, he's not going to sack the quarterback, but he's really good at with pressures, and he's younger, so you have some time to build, and we know that they invested in the draft last year in the defensive line as well. So, what is your take on this move to get Double O?
One, I have thoughts. I have lots of thoughts. One, you weren't going to get a player of his caliber at 92. So if you're able to um get him, he's 26 years old, so he hasn't reached his prime yet. So I thought that pick 92 for that. If you were to get a player that has produced if you knew you could get a player that produced that at that pick, you would jump on it. So I thought that the move was a great move. Um, Two, the way my mind works is I immediately went to it's kind of a referendum on West and Collins, West more so than Collins, that they clearly did not look at those two guys and say, from what we saw in extended action last year, that we are comfortable with these guys being, the DI, either one of these guys being DI1 anytime in the near future. Now, look, they made other moves. Elliott is gone. Um, Davis is gone. Gibbons is gone. So that is not to say that Collins and West don't have a role here. They clearly still do. But they aren't seen right now as starting level players. And I'm really excited with what he's seen pressure wise, what we saw from Williams pressure wise when he was moved inside. Because until he shows us that he is going to be a wide nine rusher last year, but he didn't show any of that, which we knew coming out of college he wasn't. And maybe that develops, maybe it doesn't. But last year he showed that he has, so in nickel packages, if you have him and Osa there together, that's going to be a formidable pressure unit. So for a team that was worst in the league, Osa and getting Williams back, because I think of him as an interior rusher, is going to be an immediate upgrade when you bring back um, Bosa back in. We've talked earlier in the Bryce Huff conversation, they still need a situational pass rusher, which there are a lot of ways to skin that cat, but that is still a spot. I think they did well getting him, and they definitely improved the worst unit in the league with that move. My initial third question was, what does that mean in terms of Collins and West, who just objectively I said all last year, and I saw flashes towards the end of the year, but they were both guys who you could tell were physically able to hold their weight in the NFL. They were not overpowered at all, and they did a lot of overpowering, splitting double teams, defeating guards, but they didn't make plays. And the pushback that I got from on the internet was that defensive tackles in this system don't need to make plays, which is horsepucky, because this is a Monty Kiffin based system and Warren Sapp is the prototype. So yes, defensive tackles here, as we have seen this defense run under Kyle Shanahan, we haven't, outside of Eric Armstead, who gets a bum rap, and DeForest Buckner, we have not seen defensive interior players that make plays, play in and play out. But it's not like they're not allowed to. We just haven't. I was disappointed these guys, as physically talented as they are, clearly didn't make more plays, and clearly management felt the same way, and they're hoping that Osa is able to. Um, so yeah, I love the move, and I hope that. And I hate to sound sports talky, but I'm gonna go ahead and say sound sports talky. I hope it lights a fire under Collins and West, and they come back motivated to be better players, because they took it personal, like Michael Jordan. He brought this dude in and I took it personal. I hope that happens. I really do, and that we are better off for it, from a depth perspective, because we are clearly overhauling that unit, and that's one place that we have gotten younger, or it appears we're going to get younger, um, based on the moves that they have made, which is, never a bad thing for this team.
All right, so let's dig into some of the smaller things that happen. We don't have to go too long on these, but they re-signed Luke Gifford, 2-year deal, Pro Bowler, special teams guy. I think um, also kind of depth piece. If Luke Gifford is seeing the field with your starting unit, that means that you got some injuries going on. So, but they brought him back. They also signed Nate Hobbs, who played for Green Bay last year. So your secondary, as far as your cornerbacks are concerned, is Lenore, Renardo Green, Upton Stout, Hobbs, and Darrell Luter Jr. Any thoughts on Hobbs?
I like that move. He was a slot most of his career up until last year where he played outside, which is what I see him and Lenore. I think that he, for the secondary system that Morris runs, he is more of a natural CB1 in that he's a more physical player. He's more physically, he's stouter than Lenore is. And Lenore is a perfect slot cornerback too in this system in that he's more of a tactician. He is not as physical. I think that a move to cornerback two and slot in nickel is the perfect use of Demo. Um, he is more suited for that role than being the lead corner, and I think Hobbs has shown that he can be that cornerback one on the strong side. So I like the move, and what is interesting is in base, it opens up. We're gonna see what they do, how they feel about Green and Luter and Upton Stout. Do they draft another corner? Do they? It's probably too late. Maybe they do the 1 year thing with an older corner, or do they just let those three battle it out to see who in base is corner? I mean, in nickel, who's the cornerback too? Because in my mind, in base, you've got Hobbs and you've got Lenore, and then Lenore just seems to me he has proven over and over again that he is best at his best position is slot um in a nickel configuration. He is literally when he's allowed to do that, and like last year I thought he was miscast as a cornerback one. He's one of the best slot corners in the league when you can play him there. So I believe this edition allows you to do that. And Hobbs is also a good slot. And Stout has showed himself. I think if when he makes it in this league, it's going to be primarily at that position. So they are more than covered at the slot position. Now it's just how the configuration happens at um, in base, and then who's the cornerback two in slot. So, but I like the move. I think that was a very very solid acquisition and kind of peaks at what it looks what I've seen on tape watching those um those Moore's coordinated defenses. It's basically the same system. He does a lot of things in the secondary that I think will be interesting and different than we've done in the past. And I think that their relationships is kind of like with Salah last year and previously that um that Kyle trusts them enough to kind of give them a level of autonomy that he didn't give to somebody like Sorensen or Wilkes, to kind of do because Salah was in his bag last year. He did all kinds of things that I'd never seen on tape in San Francisco before last year. He was just kind of making it up as he went. Another two guys out. Okay, well maybe we'll try this. And he every button he pushed was a masterclass. So I think we'll see more of the same from um, Morris, because last year was one of the most aggressive defenses he had ever um, coordinated in terms of pass rush and blitz because it was out of necessity. His secondary stunk, so they needed to pull, throw everything and the kitchen sink, striving to get pressure, and they were able to be a pretty good unit, creating pressure. And I see us having to do something similar based on what our personnel showed, and we've done some things to shore that up. So I'm looking forward to us being more aggressive, and that the defense. I think the pass rush will be a lot more effective this year, and obviously that's not saying a whole. You would expect if Nick comes back healthy, that will be a big help, and then Osa helps, and a healthy Williams helps. A healthy, one of the things you go back looking at the Wilkes tape is that Fred blitzed a lot under Steve Wilkes, and he was great at it. So, based on what I saw on tape from Atlanta last year, from their off-ball linebackers, their led rookies, off-ball linebackers in sacks, I would expect that Fred would see a healthy dose of pass rush responsibility, because he has shown when you put that on his plate, he can make plays. So I think I'm excited to see in this system what Balak Mustafa can do. He just needs to make more tackles. He is able to make plays and get in position to make plays. It's just the challenge with him so far is that it's a coin flip as to if he's going to complete the play or not. But I love the Hobbs. I went on a tangent, which I've done this entire, because I've been deep
That
in
we,
researching
we
this.
we've been waiting to get back together. This is the time.
Ye Yeah, so I love the Hobbs move. I like I see their vision in all of the moves, even if I don't agree with them. Like, for example, the Evans one. I'm not as jazzed as others are, or as you are, but I see their vision, and
Mhm.
if it works, I it's not. I don't see a bunch of random moves. I see each of these moves answers a question that we have, which has not always been the case with our free agent signings, in our draft picks. But I have liked what I've seen so far this offseason. When Lynch, he has taken a lot of heat over the last several years, and I like what they've done so far.
All right, let's hit some of the quick other ones. So Vidarian Lowe, they signed him swing tackle 2-year deal. Re-signed Jake Tonjes, who they are going to need at least in the first half of this season, while George Kittle gets better. Signed Brett Toth, center guard, to a 1-year deal. And the folks who are leaving the team, Kendrick Bourne goes to Arizona. I know some people have wondered, since he and Mac Jones have such great chemistry, if that is a possible landing place for Mac Jones, who is still on the 49ers. They have not traded him yet. Jordan Elliott went to Tennessee.
Played with Brissett.
Yeah,
Sorry, he played with Brissett too, though. So
that's true.
yeah, that they've got that New England connection as well.
Jordan Elliott went to
Sorry.
Tennessee. Sky Moore went to Green Bay. It was one of those things where you're like, "Hey, we maybe have finally found a kick and punt return." Nope, we gotta hope Jacob Cowing is going to be healthy next year, I guess. And then Robert Beal to Miami. So there's still a bunch of guys who are on the team or who are available but still tied to the 49ers from last year. One thing that came out, I think this was early, maybe late yesterday, is they did restructure Nick Bosa's cap hit for they cleared up about 17 million, which means that his 2027 cap number is like over 50 million. So they're always doing that stuff, pushing the money into the next year to clear cap money for this year. Okay, so I have two quick things for you. One, where's BA going? He's not going to be on our team. Not that we need to cover him necessarily as a 49er. Though I'm just super intrigued. Like, we've talked about this BA thing from the second that, he kind of went AWOL, and I'm just really interested what his strategy is as far as where he lands. Is he healthy? That's the other thing.
Yeah, and we got more on the chicken shit front with our front office, and that they're gonna. It sounds like they're gonna hold him as long as they can, which they are just the worst in my. Everything Jim Harbaugh said about them years ago still stands. I mean, just let it go. It's over. Just release him. I get it. I get it. Whatever. If you can try to
I mean, they're
trade him, I guess. I
clearly
just
they're clearly taking it personally. Like this, and this is
Right.
one
Exactly.
where if you want to take it personally, I completely understand. He he kind of held them. He had the higher ground in this whole thing, down to kind of forcing their hand in Kyle being able to say, "Hey, let's not trade him. He's going to sign." So they probably feel like he just messed with them in many occasions. And to me, I'm like, yeah, because the NFL always has the higher ground in these negotiations, so they feel like fools. Well, fine, because you make a lot of other players feel like fools in this scenario. So, like you said, let it go. But in the pettiness of it all, and what we know about Jed and Parag, it's very predictable.
But like in like The Wire is one of my favorite shows. Hey man, it's all in the game. So what you're telling me is having the upper hand and serving your self interest is great when you're on the winning end. You lost. You lost in this BA situation. Ryan Williams ate your lunch at every single turn. He managed to create a trade market while his client was under contract. He was able to negotiate his contract while his client was under contract, then got his client the guaranteed money, got hurt, found another loophole in a situation where was able to manipulate you guys into making a rash decision with that guaranteed money, which you'll never be able to convince me that they were acting in their self-interest. They were acting, that was a petty move because they cut their nose off to spite their face because there were still plays to be made. If they just let that guaranteed money sit, that contract is much more tradable than it is as it sits now. But no, they wanted to send a message. And so they took the money away. And that was actually a move that was not in their self-interest, but it was like a jab at him. So again, they have lost. You lost this. And there's no win for you. There's just no win in it. You're not going to be able to win this. You're not getting that. Unlike your fans want to say, you and I both know what the CPA, because Jared and Parag know the CPA, and I'm pretty comfortable with it. You're not getting any of that money back. That's gone. That $48 million is gone. They can't, and I know it's not apples to apples. The Patriots couldn't get the guaranteed money back from Aaron Hernandez. So if they couldn't figure out a way to go to court and get the money from a double murderer, you're not BA didn't break any laws. Though if you want to say showing up and missing meetings, those are suspension and fine type situations. Nobody's ever got $27 million for somebody not coming to meetings. That's just crazy. They could have appealed it. They didn't because the 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 end game of that is when you void that money, you're going to have to release him because you want to capture the cap relief. So what you're telling me is I can forfeit $27 million on the front end in exchange for unrestricted free agency. Great. I'll do that. So now, to answer your question, where does he go from here? Didn't play last year, still hasn't passed the physical. So it's most likely going to be on a 1 year prove it type deal. Everything, all the tea leaves say Washington, they are looking for a two next to um McLaurin. They've got the cap space for 1 year. Him and Daniels, you got that relationship. That seems to make sense. But I am not. When you look around the league at the places that are still wide receiver needy, I'm not sure necessarily that there aren't teams like the Raiders who would be willing to spend more than 10 or 12 million dollars on a 1 year deal. He's not going to sign anything like he signed with the 49ers. So yeah, that's true, but I don't think it's out of the question that next year he could recoup that 27 million dollars in guaranteed money. Um so yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where he ends up, if it is on a prove it deal, if it is on something that's longer term. And from his standpoint, is a shorter term deal better in that? Does he play on a 1 year deal, kind of like our guy in Dallas that I missed his name, I can't place his name several times now, the guy who's on the franchise deal,
Pickens.
um Pickens, yeah, Pickens, that's it. That he doesn't roll the dice, play on a 1 year deal, and then, you know, see what in 2027, if the team that he signed with, if they're going to franchise him, or if he's able to break the bank on a second contract. I think it's going to be fascinating how that plays out.
Also, kind of got to wonder the pettiness of, teams are probably going to reach out to the Niners to say, what you have information on this guy. We can't, what were his medicals like before X, Y, and Z. However, the owners and folks talk, and I imagine the Niners are not going to give him a glowing review. So we'll see how the shenanigans and the politics involved too, which is why, you know, the way that Ayuk and his agent handled everything, not only from what happened last year, but also in the negotiations and how they dealt. The other teams now, if you're going to invest a lot of money in him, they know what the possibilities are as far as what happens when this guy doesn't get his way. What could he do? He showed you one way, so you also have to kind of wonder about that when it comes to investing lots of guaranteed money. Will he turn on us in the same way? If he doesn't get his way, that was the cost or the risk of how they handled that first scenario with the 49ers.
As we have previously discussed, this is a relationship business, and you'll have to take, number one, is, and I think we're going to get to this in our last
Yep.
topic, is that um first and foremost in the NFL, people are operating from self-interest. So you have to take that into consideration, one. And then two, what are Jed and Parag's reputation around the league? So when you call them and you get their version of what happened, you have to look at it through the lens of how historically they have operated. And was any of that, because what I've said repeatedly all along in this thing is, beware in any circumstance. And most of us, if we are real, can use this example, is that in a divorce, anybody that tells me that it was 100% anybody's fault is lying, because it's never 100% fault. When there is a separation or a divorce, each party always has a part to play in it. So you can take the 49ers version of events, but I would always look through the lens of who it is that's telling me the story. And can I see that there was some petty chicken shit stuff that was going on in that interaction that Williams and Ayuk might have reacted to? 100%. So again, and then you hear their part of it, what happened, and you have to decide what's in your self-interest. Is the human aspect that Parag and them talk about, then you look at the tape, you run him through your physical, and you see physically where he is at. You look at the tape and see how he would fit and help you. And then you make a determination in your self interest what's in our best interest as an organization. And that, that is a push and pull. The relationship matters. Can he go sideways on us? Yes. Are we going to treat him in a way where that becomes an issue? That's something that you control. If you are able or have confidence that you can build a relationship with this player, then that going left, that's fully within your control of whether or not we ever even get there. I think that Jed and Parag, that's my personal opinion for somebody who wasn't there, but what I've seen of them since they took up going all the way back to Harbaugh is that I 100% believe that they weren't 100% accommodating to BA and doing everything they could to make sure that the relationship worked, and
They
that he
always
just
had
rebuffed them at everything.
they always have the higher ground, and that is the NFL. That
Right.
the NFL, as powerful as it isn't as powerful as it is because of the players. It is as powerful as it is because of the ownership and the deals that they are able to make with these media companies. Because if you look at baseball, which is in the US, 1/7 as popular as the NFL, those players in the Players Association is way more powerful than the NFL Players Association because of the history of how they've stuck to their guns on certain things. And in the NFL, it has gone way the other way where the ownerships are so much more powerful than the players in those things. So, you just look at how guaranteed money works in the NFL compared to how it works in the NBA and in Major League Baseball. There's your answer right there.
Oh, but I still believe that in every successful situation, you have seen it. And you go back to the rise of the 49ers. What you saw in that documentary is that there is it is it all this will always be a relationship business. And if you talk about ownership to agent, player to coach, player to ownership, the most successful organizations have they have this perfect balance, because you have the fact that it's a not for long league, and it's the next man up and all of that bullshit. That's true. But I know as a business owner, and I know that just looking at the league, while next man up is a reality, successful coaches never, you don't make people feel like everybody understands the reality, but you don't treat people like they're disposable. And there's a way to do that. And I think for all the criticism, I think Kyle does a good job of that. He seems like the type of person that is real with the players, but he seems to have a genuine respect for them. And that, look, your job, if you don't do your job or you get hurt, the next guy is coming in, but that's not something, it doesn't seem like the type of guy that is a chicken shit in a way that leverages that, which is one of the things I didn't like about Bill Walsh, is that you don't have to leverage. You don't. I would never. I would never tell somebody in my business, look, yeah, I cross train everybody, and if you aren't here tomorrow, this shit is gonna keep on running. But I don't treat people like that. I would never verbalize that. I need them to understand that I am as invested in them is I want them to be invested in me. It's a partnership, and you treat people, you don't treat them like the replaceable, disposable cogs that ultimately we all are. But I just don't, I think there's a difference between the operational reality of that and the treatment of those humans in that circumstance. You don't have to tell them, you be gone tomorrow, because that is literally the position of everybody. You say it jokingly. My dad used to say that shit all the time. you know and look, 9 months later I have another one just like you. So I mean that is a cold reality, but you don't treat people in that manner. Yeah, are we all replaceable? Yes. If I die when I was working a job, if I died, they would have an ad out to replace me the next day. But again, there's a difference between that operational reality and the management of that relationship within that reality. And I don't think Jed and Parag do a very good job of I think Parag is excellent at Rain Man, excellent at the cap management. I think he's horrible at the relationship part of the business. And that is just from what I have seen over time, the way that they approach these negotiations has no tact or humanity in it at all. Because these people aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. And I think it's a mistake organizationally to treat them like that. But to each his own. And I mean, obviously, they have, their franchise is worth $9.5 billion, and mine ain't worth nine. So what? What it ain't worth 9 million. So what do I know? But I know that part. I know that the people that have worked for me probably like me more than they like them. So I don't take that for what it's worth. And I don't see, honestly, thought about this in the aftermath of that rise of the 49ers, and I get winning, cures all ills, but I don't see who's gonna be sitting at a family style dinner with Jed 30 years from now, the way them dudes was sitting with, who's who was sitting with Eddie not too long ago. And is that important? Maybe that's not important to Jed. Maybe Jed don't give a damn about his lasting
My
impact.
guess is Jed probably cares more so about how the other owners perceive him than how maybe the players over the years perceive him. Like
Fair enough.
just from that whole corporate side of things as I see it. Okay,
And that's fair.
so
That's fair.
so we are recording this on a Saturday afternoon. This will go up in the podcast feed Sunday evening and on YouTube Monday morning. So if anything happens between Sunday and Monday, we will have missed it. It's just we didn't skip it. It just hadn't happened yet. But I want to end the show with this. We'll spend, 2 to 5 minutes on it. But this whole Max Crosby situation was fascinating. The Baltimore Ravens gave up 2 number 1s to trade for this dude, and that was the big deal of the time period. It was all over the news. Like, I'm listening to podcasts that I'm a little behind on, and they're going for minutes on end about this deal, and from the Ravens side, from the Raiders side. And then we get word that the Ravens didn't like his physical and they pull out just so that they can sign Hendrickson from the Bengals, formerly from the Bengals. And so they're like, we get our number 1 picks back. Yeah, this guy's probably not quite as good, but maybe we can use this excuse of this knee thing to kind of get out of that. So what do you think happened there? Like, I don't even care about the shadiness of how it happened. I'm interested in what you think actually happened.
I, unlike a lot of people, um, when I say a lot of people, I mean Bomani Jones and Bill Simmons in particular. I don't think that it is. I don't believe that the two-track theory is. I believe DaCosta when he said that he was working on a plan to get them both, and that they had been in talks with Hendrickson, and that obviously they had made the Raider deal, and that I believe that both those things can be true. And then the Henderson number ends up coming in lower than most people thought. Everybody thought it was going to be something like 3 for 120 or 4 for 160, something that was going to end up with the what was the deal and Daniil Hunter deal where it ended up he signed an extension for like 40 million guaranteed or in that neighborhood. So they just figured that that's what Henderson would get. Well, but when the number comes down to closer to 110, 112 for 4 years, it's like, hey, we're in the market for that. And then, I don't know. Do I understand the skepticism in that that he had surgery, that he only been off crutches for a week. So when you go in for a physical, I have no idea what what Baltimore medical staff is looking for. And his surgeon, who is supposed to be world renowned, says that he is on schedule to be ready for training camp or whatever. So I don't know what they saw that scared them off. But the thing that I find interesting in all of the Buffalo criticism is that how do you criticize Buffalo for making the decision they made, but then also everybody kind of universally feels that the market for Max Crosby is no longer 2-1s. Because so if Buffalo if Baltimore was wrong and that there's nothing wrong, then somebody else should be willing to step right in and say, I'll take that same deal, sir. But that doesn't seem like it's the case anymore. It seems like 2-1s is irrevocably off the table for this player for whom everybody thought that seems fair. Well, a week ago.
But
So that
but
is
here's the thing though. If we just talked about industry rule number 4080 in the NFL about management being shady. Even if Crosby's knee is completely fine, what Baltimore did is it artificially killed his market. So, and remember what a
yes.
market is. It's not about what that player is worth. It's about,
Hmm.
the value that the team wants to give him. He could be
Right.
worth 2 number ones, but just by Baltimore doing that, they said, "Nope, he's not worth 2 number ones." And so teams will look at that and go, "Well, even if we believe he's worth 2 number ones, his market just got reset by this other team saying, 'Nope, we're not doing it.'" That
Mhm.
is the
So why?
intriguing thing about this
So
whole thing.
why would Philly now pay 2-1s if based on what has happened this week? They, I'm not. Yeah, we're still interested, but not at 2-1s
Yeah.
though. We might do a third and a one, or anything less than. And that is the point that Bomani made that was interesting was that what has him crying foul or smelling something is that it was immediately that the trade was off and not a renegotiation of terms. Baltimore didn't see what they saw and say, we're still interested, but let's make it a 1 and a 3 or a 1 and conditional whatever. They were just like, nope, we're good. Got this guy here and we're just gonna move on, which is kind of interesting from the Baltimore perspective that there was no more, that it lends the credence to the fact that they got cold feet and they just
Yeah.
wanted out.
Yeah.
They weren't really interested in a negotiation of terms. They were just, nah, we're all right. We just want to keep our picks and you can have your player and then we're just gonna move on from there.
I mean, he's
But yeah,
probably
it's
still
like
going to get traded, but now the market is reset on him, and now you gotta have these
mhm,
conversations again because I don't know who else was in the mix with Baltimore, but
mhm.
let's say there were teams that were close to what Baltimore gave up. Now those teams are backing down from that offer just because they can, not necessarily because they think differently, but now they can because he's just worth less all of a sudden for this reason.
Well, and I mean, like you say, it probably still happens. There's still windows. We're a month away from the draft, so that's another window where it could happen. And what I think is more interesting is once he goes through a training camp and plays some games, he might be on at the trading deadline because kind of like this is like NBA-esque in its narrative is that everybody wants to be in on the 27 draft. That's the one where everybody wants the picks. So it's still possible that depending on how things go and how the Raiders season goes, that if they still look like they're an ass franchise, you're looking at that 27 pick being a jewel along with something else or maybe a 28 pick that you revisit that um trade after you've seen okay, Crosby is back and he looks to be, you know, 80, 95, 100% of what he was, and you move forward. And then it gets interesting. Do the Raiders, what happens with this year's draft? What happens with the $100 odd million they spent? Are they actually better this season? What does Clint Kubiak do? Are they actually, perceivably better early in the season? And maybe Max wants to stay all of a sudden. The building's different, the vibes are different. Maybe I just ride this thing out, or maybe we revisit moving on after he's proven himself. Because I mean, I have no doubt, it's a meniscus. I mean, this is, we got Jason Tatum coming back from an Achilles 9 months. So I have no reason to believe that Max Crosby on a meniscus cleanup is going to fall off a cliff like it's 1986 or something. So I think that if they want to trade him, there'll still be a market for him to be traded at a later date. But I'm also hoping for them. I am the opposite of a Raider fan. I'm an East Bay guy, but I was a 49er
Yeah.
fan because I didn't like the way that went down. But I am one who believes that kind of like people talk about in the NBA with the Knicks. I think the league is better when the Raiders are good. And for 20 years, I got Raider fans all in my family that it has felt like punching down talking about the Raiders for the past 20 years. I mean, haha, the Raiders suck. I mean, that's like an obvious statement. There's no fun in beating, talking about and talking shit to also rans. It's not even a hammer and nail situation. They just stink. So I would love for the Raiders to be relevant again just for the league and for to be able to razz my family members again because
I
it is just been a depressing sight. So I want them to be good or better. I don't necessarily ever want to like win anything real, but it's kind of like the Cowboys. The Cowboys had never sucked to a point where it's not fun
to make fun of
waking
him.
up and seeing that they lost. If they lost on Sunday,
Yeah.
you're always they're not bad enough to where that feels inappropriate to tease them and their incompetence.
Ice Cube will be excited if the Raiders are good again.
Exactly, 100%. Maybe he'll actually come up and he'll show up and perform for them again.
Yeah. All right. That's going to be it from here. So, we'll check in periodically as things happen. I kind of like this idea of, yeah, we kind of let things bubble and we'll do something on the weekend and we'll put it out. So that'll, we can do that as, as the draft comes along, as bigger things
Hmm.
happen, as signings happen. Anything that comes out of
Yes.
49er camp, we can connect. But there's no reason for us to come back weekly necessarily because there's
Mm-mm,
not enough news coming
mm-mm.
out. But okay, S
Can't wait for the draft. I'm so excited
what is it
about
about
the
is it a
possibility.
month?
It's like a month.
So
I am so excited. I think there are a lot of places where we can make real meaningful improvements to this team there. And if they nail this draft, we can be and this is coming from a team that went 12-5 and was one win away. I get all of that, the narrative of that, but I'm also a realist. There is right now a real gap between the Rams and the Seahawks and us. And I think that with a real good draft, along with the things we've already done in free agency, we can really close that gap and have this be a real three-team race next year. So I'm excited. I'm really excited as a 49er fan for the draft, and I'm happy with the moves that they've made so far. They didn't overspend, but they filled real good needs. They got off to a really good start, and I think we can really add some jet fuel to the fire with a solid draft. So I'm looking forward to it.
All right. That is it from here. We'll be back periodically throughout this offseason. So for Rod, I am Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.